MTG, there we got magic stuff on the YouTubes. Matter of fact, we in the MTG YouTube community, I can't speak for everybody, but I'm pretty sure it's like this all over, have been sort of collectively checking our watches and reloading MTG Salvation and Mythic Spoiler for the last like 5 days. Looking for some of these Shadows of Innistrad spoilers. I just don't think there's been anything impactful enough to bring you a full-fledged spoiler video yet. But I think that spoiler season really starts full swing Monday morning, which is when a lot of you are going to be watching this video. So that point may be moot by then, but we'll see. But while we wait on those spoilers, I figured I'd do something I haven't done in an alarmingly long time and bring you a very, very cheap budget deck. Haven't done one of these in too long, and what I've got for you today is something with no cons, no Fate Reforged, and no Shadows of Innistrad. And I have been putting Shadows cards in lately, but this one you can take up to your next F&M this, coming Friday night and play for only like $5. On TCG Player, the low end of this deck is like $4.35. The high end is about $9. So for less than $10, you can easily make this deck, and there's plenty of upgrades. We'll talk about that all. This is $5 Blue-Black Eldrazi. Blue-Black Eldrazi is a deck that a lot of people ask for all the time, and I made one maybe 3-4 months ago, something like that, but I gave myself a higher budget, and it's more of a mid-range deck. This time, we're going to focus on more of a heavy aggro deck. We're playing a lot of 1 and 2 drops in this deck. We're playing, Anthem effects. We're playing some things that generate tokens, and we're playing a lot of cheap spells that function more or less as combat tricks that pump our creatures. So we're borrowing a lot of philosophy from Ratarka Red as it sort of leaves the format. We're losing Monastery, Swift Spear, Become a Midsteamer, Battle Ridge. We can still play a deck that runs a lot of very, very fast, efficient creatures and pump spells. So let's take a look at it. Let's start with the creatures. There are 26 of them in our heavy aggro deck. Starting with 4 copies of Reaver Drone, and we are playing 8 1-drops overall. But Reaver Drone, best one we can play, I would say. Reaver Drone is the only option we have as far as a 2-power 1-drop, and very often we will take the 1 loss, 1 life loss off of it. But not a big deal. Dropping a 2-power, guy on the first turn is always good in heavy aggro. Absolutely the best option we can play. So no brainer. Don't have to talk too much about him. Just the most aggressive 1-drop available to us. 4 copies of Sludge Crawler in the deck. I know, weird, right? And if you've got a couple of extra bucks, not really that much, you could replace this with Endless One. Endless One is another, sort of fine available 1-drop for us. Just a 1/1 for 1. Doesn't sound great, but gets colorless bonuses and things. And as a top deck later on in the game, Endless One can be really, really big. So I think Endless One is a good upgrade on this. But if you don't have the 4 copies of that, or you just don't have the money available to you right now, I understand. Just play Sludge Crawler. There's a lot of decent things about this, and it's really not a bad top deck either. Looks like it would be, but it's a great mana sink late game, especially in aggro. The worst thing is when you just like draw dead. You draw a land, and you're in top deck mode. You have no other cards. Draw a land. What am I supposed to do now? That Sludge Crawler is actually not so bad in that situation because you can sink all your mana in it and make him like a 4-power guy. So Sludge Crawler's actually been not terrible, it turns out. 4 copies of Dimensional Infiltrator, and I gave you an upgrade for the last card. I gave you a downgrade on this one. If you just don't have 4 copies of this card lying around, which I don't think a whole lot of people do, honestly. It's only like 50 cents on the high end. It's not that much to get, but in case you have restricted access to it for whatever reason, just play 4 Mist Intruder instead. We're really not doing anything that we need the ingest for, but ingest is sometimes an ability that our opponent hates to be hit with. And it's a 2-drop flyer, which is what we're looking for mostly. A lot of our creatures fly in this deck, you'll notice, which is actually, it's turned out to be really good that we have so many flyers. But, obviously, right, that's basic Magic, but you'd be surprised to how much a board of mediocre flyers can do in this format. There's that. But in any case, Infiltrator, though, is just a much better choice in my opinion. It protects itself in some ways, and we do have ways in the mana base and in the Eldrazi Scions that one of our cards can create of activating that ability, which allows it to save itself. Can be really good against mass removal. And I've said this before, but I want to hammer it home here. Can be used as removal in the early game. If they swing with a guy that's only got 2 toughness, then you can play this with Flash and block it. And it's basically like you just Wild Slash the thing. So played as removal, it's really not a terrible card and can get you through to the mid game, So I've really liked, I've played it in like 3 decks now. I really, really like Dimensional Infiltrator. Just 2 mana, 2/1, flying, flash. Just all the things the card does are awesome. And they just throw in it protects itself occasionally thing. So yeah, I'm playing all of these. 4 copies of Sky Scour in the deck, which has been super secretly an amazing card, actually. Quintessential aggro card in a lot of ways, and it reminds me of Prowess. It sort of reminds me of, what is it, Glaze Fiend, I think I got the name of that right. But this card, on your screen right here, reminds me of those things. It's a pretty good aggro creature. You just play, if you have a Ruination Guide and you play one colorless spell, you suddenly have a 3-power flyer. If you play Unnatural Endurance on this thing, which you do play in the deck, suddenly you have a 4-power flyer. And if you have a Guide out, you have a 5-power flyer. So the thing can get bigger than it really looks like it ought to be able to get, and can sometimes just come out of nowhere. It's good because you'll top deck colorless spells all the time, all but 2 spells in the deck are colorless spells. So you'll top deck colorless spells constantly. This guy's almost always a 2-power flyer unless you draw a land. So just has been really surprisingly good and very, very relevant up until the 5th or 6th turn even. So if you haven't played this card yet, try it out in this deck because it's a flyer. Just like I've already said, we play a lot of flyers. And it can often fly over for like 3 or 4 damage, like easy. So try it out. This card's actually been really good. Yet another card that is secretly amazing and has been really good. 4 copies of Eldrazi Sky Spawner. This card has really impressed me actually. 3 mana for 3 power, split among 2 guys. 2 of the power flies, and the other 1 power in the equation sacks for mana that you might need, or you can sack it to pay Dimensional Infiltrator's ability. Say in case of mass removal, you know, you're going to lose your token anyway. Might as well roll the dice with Dimensional Infiltrator and see if you can pop them back to your hand. So this card has actually been impressive in multiple ways. Yet another flyer, by the way. We're flying over for a lot of damage in the deck. So, yeah, I am sort of very impressed by the performance of this card. And the fact that it produces a token when it comes into play is good, allows us to go wide. We've got another card that produces tokens for us in the deck. So being able to have that versatility, that flex to go wide when we need to, actually good and fantastic with Ruination Guide too, because you're basically putting 5 power on the field for 3 mana. So that's also awesome. Just yet another card that I didn't think would be anywhere near as good as it actually is. The card is fine. 4 copies of Ruination Guide in the deck. Every single one of our creatures, save for 2 of them, which we'll get to in a second, are colorless. And the creatures that the thing produces that's not colorless are colorless creatures. So you can probably guess what that creature is. But in any case, pretty much everything that we're running in the deck is colorless, so Ruination Guide is absolutely ridiculous. You know, I've talked about it a couple of times throughout the video already, so just a key card in the deck, really the only anthem piece that we really have, you know, so we absolutely need to play it. Ruination Guide, definite 4 of, we need to make room for that. So I really don't have anything to say about it other than, like, you obviously play this card. Have you guessed yet? 2 copies of Whirler Rogue in the deck because it produces flying, colorless creatures, and it allows creatures to go unblocked on top of that. So yeah, let's play Whirler Rogue. I think it's the perfect thing to top out our curve with in this, you know, very budget deck, sure. But even if the deck wasn't budget, I think it'd be a pretty good curve topper anyway, you know. So Whirler Rogue has just been a pretty good finisher, especially with the Ruination Guide in play. You essentially get 6 power for 4 mana, and 4 of the power flies. That's insanity with a Ruination Guide out. And even if you lose your Ruination Guide, it doesn't completely cripple you. You can still make creatures go on block, and you still have 2 flying power. So, yeah, this has been just sort of a mini P in Quran in a lot of ways, which is why a lot of people like it. And it's, you know, an uncommon that it's not, you know, like 10, 15 cents. It actually has a little bit of weight behind it because people really like this card. So, I don't blame them. Every time I played Whirler Rogue, it's been a fantastic card. So, yeah, Whirler Rogue love. Gotta play the card. Here are the spells for you. We're playing 11 of them, and all of them are combat-oriented in some way or another. Some of them are sorceries, but they're still combat-oriented in some way. And we're playing 4 copies of a Natural Endurance. Natural Endurance is super amazingly good. It serves a couple of functions. First of all, great aggro pump spell is already, I've already told you, it's good with Sky Scour, so there's that to consider. But it's pretty much good with all of our other, even small guys, making them at least 3, if not 4 power. Very, very early in the game. That's what an aggro deck wants to do. And if they do try to target, say, Ruination Guide and get rid of that, we can always regenerate it. That's good too. And it doesn't work against, say, Grasp of Darkness or Declaration in Stone, but there will be things like Fiery Impulse, for instance, against which that regeneration is going to matter greatly. So this has actually been a really good sort of pump spell in the deck, you know, great instant speed card. So I've actually, this is the first time I played a Natural Endurance, and I've really, I cannot tell you how much I like this card. 4 copies of Slip Through Space, again for multiple reasons. We really need that card draw, and I don't want to make room for like Salvage Drone, especially considering that's not card advantage. We have to discard a card too. There's really no advantage to discarding a card in the deck. So, and I didn't want to make room for a 10th 1-drop or anything. So I need something that draws cards, and this has the dual benefit of getting something through unblocked. And sure, we're not playing a bunch of big creatures, but I've already talked about how big some creatures can get just with the, you know, a Ruination Guide out and say an Unnatural Endurance, for instance. So getting 3 creatures unblocked can actually be more than just a side effect of drawing a card. And card has worked fairly well, especially considering it's just the 1 mana. You can often play this and an unnatural endurance on something, making it big and having it go unblocked all in the same turn. And you get to draw the card too. So that's actually been a fantastic trick. You know, it's not a combat trick, it's not instant speed or anything. But getting to draw that card is paramount. We need that. 3 copies of Swarm Surge in the deck to finish off the spells. Yet another card that's much better than it looks. 3 mana looks like a lot. Sorcery speed looks like it's bad. But actually, +2/+0 to all your guys on turn 5 or 6 can really help finish out the game. Especially if you've, a Whirler Rogue or an Eldrazi Sky Spawner. You've made tokens at that point. You can go very, very wide and just win a lot of the time. Not only that, but that first strike is relevant. It'll deter blocks, and if they do block, they're very likely to lose a guy or two, and we get to keep our guys. So Swarm Surge has actually been great alongside, especially, all the tokens that we're generating in the deck. So yes to Swarm Surge. 23 lands in the deck. Looks like kind of a lot in a heavy aggro deck, but we're trying to play a 4-drop in Whirler Rogue and like 11 different 3 mana cost cards. So 23 is where I want to be in the deck. Just want to make sure we don't get screwed. Corrupted Crossroads look like it might cost like $1.50, $2. That doesn't look budget. It actually is. The high end is only like 75 cents. You get this card for the average price of about 50 cents right now. That's pretty good for a card that's actually awesome. I don't really care about taking the damage that much. In an aggro deck like this that wants to win fast, your life total, just another resource. So don't be too skittish about taking the damage off of Crossroads. It's actually a must-have card for the mana base. Here's the sideboard right here, and it's fairly cut and dry. We're going to play the Duress to get the removal, and especially the mass removal, out of their hand, and all the spells we care about, like Collected Company is going to be probably a pretty important spell for the next few months, and Dispel can just straight up counter the Collected Companies, and a lot of the removal that we see, the commands, charms won't be a thing, but commands and stuff, so Dispel also been very important. Negate can just straight up counter mass removal and other things that we just don't want to see, but mostly Languish and such. It's kinfolk. And mostly everything else is pretty obvious. Fathom Feeder is just against other aggro decks. It's a decent card because it allows us to sort of, clog up the ground with this and threaten blocks, killing their biggest guy, and just fly over them in the air if that's what we need to do. Fathom Feeder's been pretty good and almost main deckable. And Self-Inflicted Wound is removal. That's what we want. And takes out Ojutai, which is a great bonus. Before I hit you with the power rankings, I'm going to briefly go over some cards I didn't play in the deck, but I do think that are worthy of consideration. First of all, Foul-Tongued Shriek, which I have a lot of people tell me in the comments every time I don't include it. You actually could include this 26 creatures. A few of them make tokens, so you could include Foul-Tongued Shriek. It's never been the card for me. But some people are very proud of their work with this card and say that, all you have to do is swing in with 5 guys and, you just hit them for 5, drain 5 life, win the game. So, it's never worked that way for me, but I know it's worked that way for a lot of people. So Foul-Tongued Shriek you could play, it's just the 1 black mana, that's what we want. As far as other 1 black mana cards, we could play Touch of Moonglove or Coat with Venom. I like Touch of Moonglove, though, a little bit better, but I elected to play either one. In this deck, but a lot of people like Touch of Moonglove. And then other cards, if you had a couple of dollars, I'll switch to that mode. You had a couple of dollars, you could play the not that expensive Bearer of Silence. I think that'd be a good 2 to 4 drop. Also has the same stats as Infiltrator, other than the flying, or other than the Flash. 2 cost, 2 power flying guy. Or can make them sacrifice a guy. If you have copies of this, definitely play Bear. I think Bear is very, very good. Hangback Walker is a colorless creature that produces tokens when it dies, and they fly, so goes along with the theme of the deck, but can't play it because it's out of budget. Here are your power rankings right here. A final score of 55, but it basically does the things that an aggro deck cares about doing and doesn't do well the things that an aggro deck doesn't care about doing. But one thing the deck is fun. Absolutely. The deck is really synergistic and is very consistent. We're always going to do what it is we're seeking out to do. We've got a lot of 4-ofs in the deck and a fairly straightforward strategy. And sure, that hurts our versatility just a little bit. We are a little one track, we're not playing much removal or really any at all. And if, our resiliency is not great either. If we get blanked by mass removal, we are in a lot of trouble, but we have a lot of stuff in the sideboard to stop that. So game 2, we have a much better shot against control, which is what's keeping game 1 and game 2 the same number there. But, the deck is, let's be realistic, the deck is not the best deck ever in its budget form, but is a great starting point, good jumping off spot, because there's an awful lot of different modifications and upgrades that can be made to the deck. That's all I got for now. Let me know how you felt about this one. Shuffle it up. It's only a few bucks. Play it against a couple of buddies. It's actually going to impress you. I've said it a couple times in this video, but a few of these cards actually were much better than I thought they would be when I first read them. So give it a shot. It's actually sort of a contender, and like I've said, very flexible and can be upgraded easily. If you enjoyed the content, do me a solid. Like, share, comment, and subscribe if you're new. Or if you just see me a bunch of times and you never subscribed, I think now's the time. So I'll see you guys next time, right? I'm Dev from SBMTG. Thanks for watching, my wizards.